I'm excited to speak today with Amanda Natividad, the VP of Marketing at SparkToro. Welcome, Amanda. Before we dive in, could you just take us a little bit through your backstory, how you started your career in marketing?
Yeah, happy to. Let's see. I guess I'll say that, I never really intended to become a marketer. I think up until several years ago, I didn't even know that people could get degrees in marketing. That's kind of embarrassing, but I had thought I was going to get into journalism. Like I went to college, thought like, no, I'm going to be, a print journalist. This is what I'm going to do. And that was where I started my career. So I started my career working at a tech news site, paidcontent.org, which was later acquired by GigaOM. So I worked at gigaom.com, more on the behind the scenes side. So I was an editorial producer there, working for a tech news site. I did that for a number of years and kind of felt myself starting to plateau. I always like to say that it wasn't that the job got boring. It was that I got boring for the job. Quarter life crisis, went to culinary school, then thought I'm going to be a food writer. Like, this is what I'm going to do next. And then ended up stumbling into content marketing by way of a D2C snack company called NatureBox. And from there was kind of off to the races, right? So got into content marketing. And then because I was at this small early stage startup, we at some point felt the need to have to focus on PR. And with my prior journalism experience, that kind of made me a good fit for PR. So started doing that, PR and sort of corporate comms, really just kind of got very tactical, hands-on experience with marketing, when I was in the role already, and have just stayed in it ever since.
Love that. So much to unpack there from your whole journey. But my husband is a former culinary student. So love that you kind of went on that route and then decided, oh, I'm going to come back into the marketing lane. But I do think so much about what you shared with journalism and content marketing. It's really that talent of being able to kind of put yourself in another's perspective and kind of tell the story, right? And so you bring a lot of the same skill set that you brought from those journalism days into your marketing career, which is a good segue into what we're going to talk about today, more around SEO investments. And as we think about scaling businesses, I think SEO, like PR, like content marketing, very related to the realms you've been in, really is a key consideration for marketing leaders like yourself and myself, where you're having to make decisions on marketing investments, and that it's not always clear what the output of that is going to be, right? What the outcome is going to be. And so in your experience as a marketing leader, what are the different types of SEO services, just to kind of narrow in on that in particular? And can you break down, how businesses should think about when they might need to consider different types of SEO services at different stages of their growth?
Yeah. So, I tend to think of the various types of SEO services into three different categories, of which ultimately what you hire an agency for can be some kind of combination of those things, can be some kind of sliding scale of things, depending on your business's needs. So those three kind of areas, or those three key areas of SEO are: one, a content audit; two, a technical audit; and three, some kind of implementation of any of those things. So what is a content audit, right? So, I know every agency will have their own way of conducting a content audit, but in its broadest sense, I would describe it as identifying the SEO content opportunity, right? So this will be in the content audit sort of stage, or that kind of service. An agency will look at all the content you've created. Maybe they'll suss out whether you're ranking for certain keywords. Then based on the content you have, and maybe based on your business goals, they'll start to identify maybe it's a short list, I don't know, some kind of list of potential keywords to go after if you're going to try to create content to rank for, right, in order to get organic traffic. So that's one area. Another area is a technical audit. So this is more or less, right, making sure your website is set up correctly from that SEO point of view, right? So they'll be identifying certain certain problems, fixes, right? Maybe it'll be like, hey, you actually need to, restructure your site so it's set up this way instead, whatever that might be. And then the third one is implementation, right? So this might be if you hire an agency to create that SEO driven content for you, or maybe it's hiring an agency to fix your site structure, right? So any kind of agency can they might offer all of these services. They might offer a portion of it. Really kind of, every agency is different, right? And then from there, you might have different agencies that sort of cater more towards B2C businesses or e-commerce specifically, or maybe it's B2B. So I would really just encourage any brand out there, any business looking to hire an agency to really think through maybe the type of industry you're in, the specific SEO needs that you have. And really the most important thing is, I believe, is to think of what SEO, like think really clearly about the job that you want SEO to do for you and how to think of that job in the context of which SEO service you're hiring. So a local small business might really want to focus on local SEO, right? And then maybe they really want to prioritize getting their Google business profile set up properly, right? So that's a particular kind of SEO service. Maybe a new to the industry kind of startup, maybe they really want to go after high volume keywords and then, execute on a blog that will fulfill those keywords. So really just think through what type of job you want your SEO service to do.
Love that. And I think you talk a lot around, with your work at SparkToro, excuse me, the content strategy needs to really understand who you're speaking to, right? And I love that you brought up the experience in your industry, or maybe they have an understanding of your local market, right? That they can really kind of tap in, not just to that keyword strategy, but actually a deeper understanding of who are you trying to create content for and rank effectively for with your website. And so when you think about, those specific projects you talk through, like a content audit, a tech audit, and then actually contracting someone to execute that work for you, are there kind of specific tactics you always look for that you think will yield like a better ROI for the business? Or are there particular KPIs that if someone's not as familiar with SEO services and what to look for, that you recommend they track? Or do you think it really should just start with their general business goals and that these agencies can help them kind of define what the right KPIs are to look at?
So I guess where I would like to start is I always recommend people get a really, really good sense of their current benchmarks, right? Like, what does your current traffic look like? And when I say current, I say over the past, we'll say 3 months, right? Like, what does organic traffic normally look like? What do page views normally look like? And also just thinking more holistically, right? So it's not just about how your website's doing, but it's also like, how's your social media standing? How many followers do you have? What is like an average amount of impressions on one of your posts, right? Getting a really, really good sense of all these general kinds of metrics, all these kind of organic metrics, so that you have a baseline for what to compare against later on, right? So starting with that. After that, one fairly basic thing I think anyone hiring an SEO agency can do is create a spreadsheet that will sort of estimate the traffic opportunity or suss out the organic traffic opportunity as a result of an SEO driven strategy, right? So you can do some of this guesswork. I think there are templates online, but you can do some of this guesswork based on, the data that you would get in like a Moz or Ahrefs, where it shows you like keyword search volume, and you can kind of take into account like, okay, if I rank in the top 10 for this, like generally, like how much traffic can I expect? Like you can create these kinds of estimators and spreadsheets. And I think that's helpful, right? To get a sense of what you kind of want to shoot for, right? Over the next 3 to 6 months with an SEO content strategy. But aside from that, I would also challenge businesses to challenge their agencies on what those metrics are, right? So I think it's also a good learning opportunity for both parties, really, to get to understand how they're tracking success. So maybe the business who's hiring the agency can ask like, well, how do most clients track success here? Or what does a business like mine normally do? I mean, I really believe that content or operational sustainability is a really important KPI to shoot for. And with that, I mean, like, let's say you're hiring an agency to suss out the keyword opportunity for you and to create content for you. And then great, and they're publishing blog posts. Awesome, right? That's what they're doing. But you as the in-house leader who's managing them, what are you doing with that? Like, they're giving you all this content. Are you going to repurpose it into like an email nurture campaign? Are you going to repurpose it into a webinar or masterclass? Are you going to repurpose it into standalone zero-click assets for social media? Like, it's also on you as a business owner to figure out what you're going to do with all that content. So I think a big thing that people should really think about is that sustainability factor of the content.
So with that, I'm curious, as you've thought about it in your career or as you've worked with other teams, how do you think about when is it something you should outsource, or when is it better to keep that function kind of internal when it comes to content creation or content promotion? You talked about how much it's on the business leader to kind of make the most of that. So what are the things that you like to suggest keeping in-house versus looking external for support with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I kind of think a big part of this answer is it depends on the team, the in-house team that's in place. Like if the in-house team happens to be really proficient at, say, content marketing, maybe there's going to be more around like paid / advertising stuff that they would outsource because it's not really within their core skill set, or, other way around, right? So I think a lot of it is with the team that's in place, what are those individuals' core skills and how can we get the most out of that, while also finding complementary, and complementary meaning like what complements the team, right? What's a good counterpart to the team? Finding the complementary sort of resources outside of that. So that's one way to look at it. I think the other thing too is I do think it's important to distinguish what kind of needs to always be in-house versus what can be outsourced. I always feel like things that are deeply tied to values, company values, / really strong opinions, like strong points of view, really needs to come from in-house. And I say that because like, even if you just think about like people who have ghostwriters, for instance, when it's not good, you can always tell. Anyone can tell, right? Anyone can tell like, oh, they didn't write that. They just hired someone to do it. But if somebody has a ghostwriter and you can't really tell, like that's clearly done really well. And so what are some lessons we can learn from that? I think people who successfully have ghostwriters now are probably people who were doing a lot of the work themselves for a very long time, right? Where they've been writing, conceptualizing their own things for years, where they've built up this huge library of existing content and points of view and like philosophical foundational pieces, where a ghostwriter can then later come in and sort of build upon those things, or just kind of find ways to repurpose, kind of remix those things. So I'll say that like things related to your core values, your strong points of view, how you believe and how you see the world needs to come in-house. So that might be something like a piece of like from the CEO that's like why we started this company. Now the piece to that I think you can outsource might be like the media outreach associated with that, or like maybe it's the repurposing of those assets into social media assets, right? Like things that you can kind of more easily train people to do. Like you can train people to do aspects of your job, but it's a lot harder to train somebody to think like you.
Absolutely. Having that point of view is foundational to ensuring anyone externally is going to be able to replicate that, especially when it comes to marketing services. Right? Have you articulated the story enough that somebody else can go out and tell that and repurpose that? So I love that advice. I guess last question on that is, you talked a lot around finding, kind of maximizing your in-house capabilities and your talents internally, but then looking for complementary skill sets that you might be able to pair externally. So what are some of the qualities that you look for in an agency or consultant when you're contracting for SEO services or PR services, as you think about finding the right fit? What are some of the things that you're often vetting for in those conversations?
Yeah, so I look first and foremost for transparency. Like, how transparent with me are they going to be about how they do their jobs, how they track success, about who does what in the team, right? Like, if I hire, if I'm in a pitch meeting with an agency and I'm talking to like their VP, I don't expect that their VP does all the work, right? Like, I expect they have a team and like the team is collaborating. Things I would want to see and what I would want to know is like, I would want the executing team, like I would want to meet them early on. And like I said, like if it's a PR agency, like I don't expect the VP is writing the press releases for outsourcing. I'm expecting someone on the team does it, but I'm also expecting that VP is setting that vision or that strategy and that they're working together, or that VP is reviewing things before it goes back to me. So I want to get a good sense of how the work gets done, who's involved. I don't need to know step by step how everything gets done, but I would like to know that things are approved by that, by that senior leadership before it gets to me, the client. So transparency is really important to me. Honestly, references are important. Like, I actually checked them. I don't know that everybody does, that not everybody looks for it, but I think it's important. I also want to get a sense for any past clients who they no longer work with. What are the myriad of reasons that they don't work together? Because it doesn't have to be it was some kind of acrimonious, like, terrible ending, but it might just be like, oh, they decided to no longer run social media ads, so they no longer hired my social media ads agency. Like it could be that. And then last thing I look for, I'll tell you one thing I don't look for is I don't like overuse of like jargon. I don't like things that are seemingly too polished. Like, I will take a plain Jane email, just text written, over a splashy deck any day. Like, I fully believe that building a nice deck is a very important and commendable skill, but that's not what at the end of the day, I don't care. Like,
a deciding factor on whether you go with that
totally
is another.
Totally.
Right? Probably not the person you're going to be working with who built the deck anyway. So if you could swap jobs with any marketer for a day, who would it be?
Ooh, who would I swap jobs with? You know what? I'm going to say Seth Godin, just because I'm like, I want to know, like, what is his day like? What is he writing about all the, because I know what he's writing because he publishes every day, but like, I just kind of like want to be in there in that room, and I want to be a fly on that wall and see like that full creative process. I think every marketer admires Seth Godin. So
great one. And then what's a go-to podcast that you're listening to right now?
I don't know how honest I should be about this, so I'll give you two answers. One podcast is Lenny's podcast, right? Lenny Rachitsky's podcast, because like they're just very thorough deep dives into a given like company or campaign or business function. So what I really appreciate about his show is that whatever that kind of topic is, that in the topic that the guest is representing, you feel like an expert on that particular topic after that full episode. So that is one. My other favorite podcast right now, going to be very honest with you, is a podcast called Trashy Divorces. And it's just about like celebrity breakups and divorces and how things went down. And it is my favorite podcast to listen to when I am folding and sorting laundry.
Well, thank you, Amanda. I really enjoyed talking with you today around the SEO considerations as businesses are thinking about the types of agencies they might want to work with as they look to 2025. So thanks for sharing all of your insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Katie. This is fun.